Um, so I have somebody over there in another space, seeing if it's going to record. Hey, is it recording? It is. Okay. Okay. Great. Sorry about that. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, we could probably just leave all the conversation for the actual podcast, and I'll try to. I haven't done this in a little bit, so let me see if I remember my intro. Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook podcast. Um, Yet again with the master of Cyberpunk, the Technobabylon extraordinaire. Technobabylon, one of my favorite adventure games and science fictional and cyberpunk games. And the creator of Technobabylon is, of course, James Dearden. And yeah, we haven't talked in a couple years, so I'm sure there's lots of interesting things to catch up on in cyberpunk and post cyberpunk and science fiction and all possible topics that we tend to cover. So, anyways, thanks again for coming on, James.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, how's it been going over the last 2 years?
Um, there's been, well, as I've been saying in a few places, there's been a bit of a delay with progress when it comes to development. I've got some neurological issues that have been flaring up, epilepsy related. So, whole new thing of losing the use of my left arm and leg when it happens, which was, as I say, a new one, but that seems to have calmed down a bit. Might still be going to Adventure X this weekend with a cane, though, so we'll see what happens.
Oh wow, yeah, that's Oh, is it? Oh, oh shoot, I didn't even realize it was Adventure X, but wow, that's got to be a new challenge. So that is a recent development for you in the last.
I think it started in about May 2021, I think. So it was during lockdown and it didn't really seem serious enough for going out to the hospital or anything. And the GPs over the phone and the video chat said, yeah, this happens sometimes. It's called Todd's paresis, and it goes away after a day or two. So it's the kind of thing to adapt and live with. And also, it's a great excuse for getting out of things as well.
Yeah, I imagine. Um, yeah, I mean, at least it's good to hear that Techno Babylon 2 is still coming along. I think we're kind of in a race now. I've been working on Neo 2 for I think 6 years, but you're winning the race because I think it's been 8 for Techno Babylon 2, if I'm not mistaken. um,
Yeah, if I'm counting when I started production of the first Technobabylon, I'm about 4 weeks away from it being a decade. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. But in our defense, I think it took over 10 years for Cyberpunk 2077 to to release. So we still have
That's
some time.
true. And you can't rush quality.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, I guess I'm sure a lot of people will be interested to hear any updates, or is there? I mean, not necessarily updates, but like how is there anything in Techno Babylon 2 that has like I guess you can't really spoiler it, but is there anything we could say anything about the game, or the world, or how you like approached or changed development, or how
Ooh,
yeah.
it's Yeah, it's so they've had a couple of design changes depending on who's been on board and available. So Ben Chandler, who's the fantastically talented artist who handled the character sprites and the backgrounds for the first Techno Babylon game, um, he's been working on other projects like uh, that, that other one for Wajita that's coming out shortly. Oh dear, this is a mess. um, Skies, something Skies. Dang it. He's been doing art on a more dedicated basis for Wajatai on Nighthawks. Um, and for Dave's own game that's coming out in the near future. So he was on board with Technobabylon the first year or so, Technobabylon 2 for the first period of development, but yeah, that's when I had to pause due to the brain issues. But so since then, I've been working on designing styles of gameplay and art that aren't dependent upon other artists. So I've been experimenting with mixed 2D and 3D media. I've been using Blender to render 2D characters with the aim of making them look kind of like they came out of a 90s cartoon. So, like there's cartoons in the 90s, like Johnny Quest, where they do 2D bits in the real world and then switch to 3D for cyberspace.
Right, right, yeah.
So I was aiming for something like that for a while, and essentially I rebuilt the first section of Technobabylon using this process, also as a test for how Unity handles its dialogue and things like that, using the fantastic Adventure Creator package, which I would recommend for anyone developing adventures in Unity. It makes it essentially like AGS, which is a lot more straightforward to work with. AGS, that is. And I've also been messing around with other styles. The problem is, as you get better at the art, at the 3D, you suddenly want to try new things. So I've been kind of taking PlayStation 2 games apart, 2003 kind of games apart, and seeing what makes them tick. I figure retro is a moving target, and I'm one of those people who believes that 2003, the PS2, the original Xbox, those are going to be a nostalgia hit in the same way that the early 90s LucasArts Sierra 320 by 200 was.
Yeah, totally. The early noughties, I want to say like the early, 2000, 2001 to 2003 is definitely a genre of games that, like, obviously I've been involved in multiple projects. One of them is a Unity project that is working on a science fictional game that is it's a sequel to my Deus Ex Total Conversion, Terminus Machina, that is obviously based on the 2000 game. I think you've played some of that, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I have indeed, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So Terminus Machina's sequel, Terminus Cyberstar, is built in the Unity engine, and it is. I'm actually not the one. I'm not the. I am not the hand. I'm not the boots on the ground for that game. Let's put it that way. I'm not the. I basically just wrote the story. I constructed the world, and this guy who played the original Terminus Machina said, I want you to, make a game with me. And I said, okay, fine. And basically gave him what would be a, larger, more complete standalone game. And they're making it in Unity, but it is using a, it's, I said System Shock 2. I know System Shock 2. I know Deus Ex. Obviously, Invisible War also came up. Deus Ex Invisible War is another game from right around that era. I think that's right around 2003. I want to say, right, 2004.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're kind of. I think it started out as more of a late 90s game, but they've since updated it, so it's closer to a mid. I think it's closer to a mid 90s level of fidelity, like the graphics. I mean, it's got lots of modern the volumetric lighting. They've got the full. I mean, they have systems that I don't even fully understand in there. Like they have like the night day cycle, all the kind of things you might come to expect from modern 3D games, but it's not it's not photorealistic. So
it's got a quality of life features that have been innovated since 2003 that would now feel weird to not have.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, yeah, for me it's kind of like I'm still I don't spend as much time playing games, and when I do play games, I find myself going back and just playing some random Doom mod for some reason. I think it's because there's too much story I'm currently trying to hammer out the story for Neophyte 2. So it takes a lot of my ROM and my RAM is like absorbed. So I can't consume like too long form or too deep and expansive of worlds, like or deep RPG worlds at the moment. I feel like I'm gonna do like a lot of playing soon. But anyways, back to you. So I mean, I think that's really neat that I think that we're that the retro, what counts as retro is a moving target, and I think that um I definitely, I mean, from what I've seen, there's a lot more of that coming out. I've seen like lots and lots. I've seen a lot of specifically Deus Ex related immersive sim sort of games.
Yeah, if IDOS aren't making Deus Ex, somebody else has to.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of younger people I've seen like it's obviously hard to know exactly how old people are, but people are saying like I was born after Deus Ex came out, but I'm like going back and trying to figure out how to make games like that. In part because the some of the larger games they kind of lost some of the feeling of those 90s and 90s games that have more of a not necessarily auteur, but like they have like the intentionality of like I'm trying to produce a level that feels a certain way that and it's not quite as you know some of the modern games can feel like a theme park made for consumption. I mean, which is good to make them more accessible of mass audiences, but at the same time it's like there are some people, even people who aren't just nostalgic. It's actually just like young people who want to have games where you're thrown into the world, and they you just kind of have to interact with the world, like in Deus Ex, or like in the immersive sim, where you just kind of figure out the rules of the world. Read you read people's emails and you read other people's emails. It's just it is a game about being a sneaky little spy in Deus Ex. Anyways, I'm just kind of rambling now, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess you could take any of those things I just said in any direction you want.
Yeah, I'm one of those weirdos who enjoyed Invisible War quite a lot. I did a playthrough of the entire series recently, having a go of the Deus Ex recut, remaster mod.
Oh yes, yeah.
Because yeah, because I've never managed to get through the entirety game on entirety of the game on realistic before, but this time finally managed it. A lot of sneaking involved in that approach. But yeah, I mean, no doubt you'd agree. It's impressive how well Deus Ex still holds up these days.
Yeah, I try to go back and play it at least once a year, and then just see. I trying to find some mods to kind of update it, and I did play through the I think it was Deus Ex. There's a Deus Ex mod that takes the main character, and you can play like a female JC Denton. I don't know if you saw that one.
Oh yeah, Lady Denton.
Lady Denton, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, and then I was like, wow, so they actually went through and like took every single piece of it's like thousands of lines of dialogue in that game, and they revoiced everything. So that was actually a lot of work. That's a lot of dialogue to go through, and also they figure out how to get the. I think Terminus Machina still holds the record. I think I might hold the record. I don't know if I still do. I remember at the time I did of like the most actual changes to the Deus Ex engine, which is an ancient, difficult. It's a modification of the Unreal Engine, and it's notoriously difficult to add a new player, to add new character models for a host of reasons. I remember talking to the nameless mod creator, and he was like, "How the heck do you?" How did you add a map into that engine? And I was like, I couldn't tell you, because it was thousands of I don't know, maybe hundreds of hours of pounding my head against the wall and trying to stop Unreal Ed from crashing. That's what I remember. I kind of miss sometimes. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Uh, Oh, so the other thing I've been doing lately is tearing games to pieces to see what makes them tick. And Human Revolution and its Unreal spin-off, The Fall, were some interesting ones as well. Sort of the later 2000s rather than 2011-ish, but it's kind of fascinating to see how little changed from 2004 to 2011 in terms of quality, because everything was kind of the PS3 generation by that stage. And a lot more of it seems eminently doable. I have to keep watching out for scope creep and so I'm not thinking, you know what I should do? I'll just make an immersive sim instead.
Well, if you can, yeah, if you can get some, get some support. I guess the hardest part about that is you have a lot of more options and a lot of more, what do you call? There's a lot of possibilities, and so then there's a lot. It is a lot of. It is a lot of scope. But if I could, I'll see. If I can put you in touch with the people that are working. If you at some point you want to do that, the people who are working on the Terminus Cyberstar, because I do not have the mental bandwidth to deal with a complete immersive sim by myself standalone. I could barely get through the mod that's basically just taking the levels and taking the characters and taking a world. But anyway, so yeah, I think that's that would be something interesting. I guess at some point, but yeah, if you're kind of mostly, as you said, you're kind of working uh, mostly solo at the moment, then that's gonna be a lot of work. Yeah, how has it been? Just
Mm.
in terms of like, so at this point, you're kind of making. I think you said like models and characters. And is the story done, or is that kind of like happening at the same time as the the
So the way I've been doing it, I have a huge document, well, several documents of whenever I get ideas, I note them down on my phone, and then I split them into Technobabylon or not Technobabylon. And as a result, I've got about three different plots that I've been gluing together with random ideas as they come, getting bigger and bigger, each one of the three. And I feel like to some extent they could thread together if it was a game where you're switching between character perspectives like the first game, or some of them would just stand on their own just fine. One of the ones, for example, which yeah, there's no spoiler to say in this case, I think, rather than focusing on sale agents working for the city, instead you're a guy, low income guy who is doing odd jobs for his food machine.
for the food
Like
machine.
Jeffy the chef, the corporate mascot, was saying, "Hey, I noticed you aren't making very much money. Would you like to earn an extra few credits by making some deliveries for us?" And the deliveries get progressively more and more peculiar until you've dug your hole so deep that you realize you're in an awful lot of trouble. And saying Sheffy made me do it isn't exactly a great excuse to the authorities.
Yeah, that was yeah. Sheffy was one of my favorite characters from Techno Babylon. People, if you don't know, you have to just immediately pause the podcast and then purchase Techno Babylon, okay, and then play through. So you can get up to speed on Sheffy the chef, which is yeah, I don't know. Some people, I guess you might say, some people might find the character, well, it's a very colorful character. Let's put it that way. It's very there's a big personality for a 600 by 400 game. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So that sounds really interesting. Actually, that's probably like a good idea, for kind of a, it kind of gives you a set of missions, that kind of keeps things moving along, and then also
Hmm.
you're I could see like there's a lot of ways that you could spin that in terms of the narrative. Yeah, that sounds.
Whether it's a full-on plot device or whether it's like Invisible War, where you're doing missions for the celebrity chatbot who also happens to be spying on citizens for the WTO.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And now everybody also has to go and get Deus Ex for 87 cents on sale on Steam, and also I think Invisible War. I guess it's about that. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, if people who obviously, I think some people will know the cyberpunk genre if you follow me, but if you don't, like, yeah, definitely having 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 ostensibly very upstanding righteous entities that end up like sending you to do not so righteous good not so good things is a staple of the genre. Yeah, so that sounds like Yunako with the face of Sheffy the chef. That's what I'm thinking now. Uh,
Uh, your appointment to THE Foods should be finalized within the week. I've already discussed the matter with Jeffy the chef.
yeah. um. Oh my god. Yeah. That should be a lot of fun. Yeah. So in terms of like the actual so the world, I've seen some of the screenshots and I've seen some of obviously that's obviously changing and kind of in flux. Um, the setting Technobabylon 1 is set in I forget the name of the city exactly, but you know it's a South African, I believe it's South African city of the future. For the most part, it all takes place in that very cyan with bits of gold, very stylistically and aesthetically impressive city. Is it kind of taking place in the same world? The sequel?
To some extent. So I'd say about half of it is taking place in Newton, the city there. So essentially, initially I set it there arbitrarily because it's so Kenya. It's in what is today Kenya,
Oh yes.
because I was born there, and Kenya is a good site for space industries. It's closer to the equator you get, the cheaper it is to launch rockets. So I was thinking, city of the future, good place for that. It's in a place that's called Lamu County in Kenya, and it's got a great, fascinating history if you want to take a look at it, if anyone wants to take a look at it. But I'm looking, I want the sequel to look a bit more into that as well, and kind of the dichotomy of how this city of the future notion has also been crushing the indigenous culture, such as it is there. But the essentially the initial notion was like a Dubai of East Africa, um,
Hmm.
completely fictional though, and it's also handy because the big island in Lamu is about the size of Manhattan as well, so it's a decent yardstick.
Yeah, yeah. I did. Yeah, I guess I didn't quite. Yeah, I think I remember I was reading. I picked up on this was somewhere in Africa, but I couldn't remember exactly where. So yeah, Kenya. Yeah, that makes sense though. I didn't realize it was a good choice for the space industry though. Um, they were obviously I'm in well maybe not obviously I'm in Hawaii and they were recently trying to build a. There was talks about a spaceport actually very close to where I am. In fact,
Hmm.
like less than 50 miles from where I am. That never quite manifested for many reasons.
Took off, as it were.
What's that?
It never took off, if you will.
Yeah. It never took off. Exactly. They couldn't manage to. Well, there's a lot of things that they couldn't manage to do. But one of the things is the things that you mentioned, which is dealing with the indigenous culture in Hawaii as well. Which that's a long story, but you know, I think that yeah, that's it's interesting that you kind of said it there because I think a lot of times people, um, in a positive way, because you know you'll have things set in obviously the United States. Cyberpunk gets set in Detroit, like obviously Deus Ex 3, Human Revolution begins there. You know, you have Deus Ex 1. Go. I would just me and James both know Deus Ex the most, so I'm gonna use that as the rule of thumb game we're gonna reference. China is there's Hong Kong and New York and Paris are the main sites of Deus Ex 1. Obviously, if you go all the way back to Neuromancer, the Godfather of the Cyberpunk, you're in Japan a lot of the time, in the US, and then some of that's in Europe. But I think so. Africa. My point is that setting it in Africa gives it a unique spin, and also, yeah, just kind of like having that be a place where they have cities of the future is, I think, important as well. Just from like uh, you know, shifting the narrative about what the possibilities of the future look like, particularly in a time when um, I guess I don't know. It's a bit this maybe this will dovetail off into a slightly different topic, but it is I find it is a bit tricky, right, to write both cautionary tales of a speculative or science fictional nature, and also um more positive, let's say not necessarily utopian tales, but it's hard to write positive or cautionary science fiction, um, because of many reasons of the present kind of scooping and increasingly resembling dystopian science fiction, and then also um, trying to make I would say particularly to Western audiences, trying to sell the positive future is difficult. I mean, I don't know if you've run into such problems yourself. Uh,
I keep finding the future overtaking things. Like so many times, people have sent me articles about restaurants serving cloned human meat, which was one of the chapters of Technobabylon revolves around the restaurant specializing in that.
oh, I didn't realize there were restaurants selling cloned human meat.
I think it's a really niche specialty item, but it's sort of more of a novelty shock to attract attention towards it. Maybe one or two items, but uh, it's or sometimes they're just doing cloned animal meat as a test bed for more environmentally sound practices than industrial agribusiness, which requires cutting down thousands of kilometers of forest to feed grazing animals when you can grow them in a tank.
Right, right. I know that meat, yeah, like grown meat is definitely picking up a lot of steam. Like I mean, you can get um, you know, I think plant based meat substitutes, or something that is obviously not coming from a butchered cow or a pig, or etc., for obviously climate change related reasons, possibly morality related reasons, and so like that's um, and I'll ask you just the cost. I noticed that like the cost of, I don't know how it is where you are, but the cost of beef. I was like looking at the menu for a burger. It's like $20 for the when in the U.S. and its colonies, we have the Burger Kings and the McDonald's, and it's like $20 for the meals now. And if it's hamburger, or if it's anything with beef, it tends to be like almost like twice whatever the non beef specifically option. And recently also, for a variety of reasons, the chicken has been way more expensive as well. Like last year, the eggs were like 5 times as much in many places than they usually are, and so some of it's just for economic reasons. People are having to switch out. Like people are eating just whey protein, or just peanut butter in a lot of parts of the U.S. I think there was like something like 70 million. 2 or 3 years ago, there were 70 million people who were at some point malnourished or unable to get enough of the appropriate calories and macro and micronutrients, or just maybe not all year starving, but there are people that are routinely suffering what was ostensibly only in quote unquote third world countries, but the U.S. is looking increasingly third worldish. um
It's one of those structural inequalities that just really shouldn't be happening these days.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't know how are things looking in um yeah, how are things looking where you are over there on the other side of the pond?
Well, they've been having egg shortages for the last year or so, but I think that's to do with avian flu that's been going around. So they've been keeping the chickens in and minimizing that sort of thing. During the lockdown, we had the hilarious, well, not hilarious, a situation where the shelves in the supermarkets were all bare and empty, and even still, as because since Britain left the European Union, food has been not been quite so easy to import. So supermarkets are trying to hide the empty shelves. And my wife doesn't let me use the term environmental storytelling anymore when I was describing the supermarket to her.
En- environmental storytelling. um,
It's a it's a great part of game design.
yeah, yeah. That was like my that's always been my favorite part of the science. The science fictional games in particular because you can just walk around and interact with random objects and you can tell like mini stories right in each description. That's like I like to do that in the games because I tend to just write like that. I'll just kind of spiral out about a particular object and then that's like a and it builds the world and it also kind of can further the story if you don't get too bogged down in it. But yeah, I guess if you're yeah, when you're just like walking around in the world. I mean that's how like actual quote unquote real life operates that way. You just kind of you know everybody doesn't like simultaneously just go into a total collapse and then everybody starts shooting each other and then there's a horrific war or it's kind of like people just kind of slowly slow motion in a kind of like slow motion almost like a trance like state like kind of wander into the apocalypse. It seems like that's kind of how I call like I like to like I remember like when I was working on Terminus Machina I was like there's a lot of post-apocalypse and then there was a lot of like there's Armageddon, right, where Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck have to stop the end of the world, right, with which obviously involves
Hmm.
the United States fossil fuel industry, the military, and a bunch of plucky Americans, right, and they, as it always must, and the you either stopping the apocalypse, right, or some catastrophic, or Independence Day, right? It's a catastrophic war, or a terrorist attack like in True Lies, or it's like you have post-apocalypse where everything's gone and destroyed. The zombies have come, the plague, the virus, the EMP, nuclear war, sub-nuclear war, whatever has happened. Everything's all the skyscrapers are like piles of dust, right? And now we're pretty just like trying to find the last can of pork and beans, you know, and it's always kind of like, the event. The event that destroys everything is sudden. It takes about a week to maybe 2 months, sometimes one day. It's inevitable. It's unstoppable, unless an empire is involved, unless one of the G7 is directly involved in stopping it, led by the United States, and there's afterwards you just have to survive it and so we can either be like really close to our and I love post-apocalyptic stories because they feel like especially in the pandemic era I'm watching a lot more of those because they're much more relatable as somebody who's immunocompromised and not going a lot of places but it's also like kind of like you have to I guess long story short I gotta I'll stop rambling in a second. The Terminus Machina was like, what if we like took in the middle of the things that are happening, the way that they actually happened, right? The way that societies, countries, actually fall apart because they are constantly falling apart. Such as the Native Americans, such as what happened to Hawaii, such as what happens in war zones put there by imperialism for the last 100 years, led by the United States, right? If you actually look at how things fall apart, they don't just crack and instantly everything's gone. It tends to be like a slow motion degradation, and people are in denial. People are running away from it. And it's kind of a slow ratcheting up of the suffering. Like one day you wake up and there's a flood somewhere. There's one day you wake up and there are some bombing somewhere, and it's not you. But eventually, one day you wake up and you're the news story, and anyway, I just said a lot of words there, so I don't know if you want to react to what I just said.
I also it's also interesting that although, as you said, you've got the short, sharp shock and you've got the long progress of these situations, but I like the idea of looking into the ones that are absurd, like almost comical. Like in 1997, Albania ended up in a civil war because of a pyramid scheme.
That is comical.
It's one of those situations you have to step back, and sort of you sort of think that got to be an oversimplification, right? No, it turns out that they essentially bankrupted the country with a pyramid scheme, and it eventually led to a UN, US, and NATO peacekeeping mission in the country.
Oh my goodness. I guess in a certain sense, the United States uh, semi wound up in that position after the 0809 pyramid scheme. Maybe a confluence of many pyramid schemes. I actually almost got involved. It I like to joke that I was about I was about three I was three seminars away from becoming a Goldman Sachs high frequency trading programmer for planet destroying, planet eating algorithms. But I kind of when I found out economies would have to scream in order for me to make $200,000 a year, I kind of it's like maybe I shouldn't get involved in those things. It's like it's kind of like maybe we should try to avoid that. But obviously, a lot of people on Wall Street, you know, they they, they saw that as a valid trade off to cause extreme economic pain and austerity all over the world, including in America itself. Anyways, so yeah, I think that's like interesting to look at the absurdity. I mean, I think a lot of it is absurd, right? It's kind of like, I mean, obviously, you could take that from any angle. You have environmental scientists like setting themselves on fire, right? To which is absurd. You think that uh, in free thinking,
Tactics of
rational,
desperation.
yeah, you think that in free thinking, rational societies that you wouldn't have to have the leaders doing the rational, scientific, empirical thinking, setting themselves on fire in order to attempt to get right the society or at least the government to do something. But that's kind of already absurd. Or you know um like obviously current events, there are mass. I know there was like 100,000 person protests in the UK. They're everywhere. I've been seeing these to stop absurd absurd conflicts, right? In a particular place spiraling out of control, and obviously, of course, like mass horrific slaughter. So I mean, that's possibly gonna cause some people are saying that actually like what's currently going on in the Middle East could not just cause the end of the regimes there, one in particular, right, committing horrific crimes, but also collapse the United States itself because it's overextended. It's involved in you know it's already been involved, and it's been throwing mountains of money right into the conflict in Europe. And so anyway, so all of that's kind of absurd when you think about it, because there's like we talked about, like there are people that are not having their basic needs being met, in terms of food, obviously in terms of healthcare. The health system's falling apart. I mean, even before the pandemic, it was a shambles. It's a, it's like $10,000 to ride in an ambulance, right? And people are just like, I think a lot of people know the kind of horrors of the U.S. health industry, and the housing industry is we have I forget what it is, like 500,000 plus people on any given night homeless. But then outside of that, there are people that are most of the millennial and younger are priced out of ever owning or even living in any kind of stable housing situation. So anyway, so all that's kind of absurd. And I know that's all. I think that's one of the difficulties that I have when I try to picture the positive features, is that it's hard to see outside of like some very large change, right? Because I know you like to talk. I'm trying to bring back Technobabylon and Technobabylon too. That it's like you I think you kind of talked about it being kind of not so not as much like the Johnny Mnemonic, not quite as dystopian, but just kind of like a society that is in the future that has a lot of high tech, that has like virtual reality, cyberspace, or the trance, right? But then it's there are parallels in the society, but things
Oh
aren't
yeah, I
completely
think
screwed. Yeah.
the way I like to look at it is that so plenty of people they look at the future and they see endpoints, but it never ends. It keeps going and going. Life and existence is a change rather than a series of ends. So in this case, society changes, adapts to the world, and some problems go away and others get worse. New problems arise as well. So on the whole, in Technobabylon, the city in the game is kind of an island of civilization, relative calm. Um, and yes, there are places outside like so one of the secondary stories that I'm exploring in the sequel is a sort of eco war in the north of Brazil. Um, so there's undercover work going on there. But looking at some more of the aspects outside of the city that was there, and what the new issues mean, not just on a personal level, like for the characters in the first game, but on a global geopolitical level, because my degree was in politics, and however much I hate it, it's a good source of drawing upon the patterns of how things change and how people are motivated by them.
Right, that's right. Yeah, you have your degrees in politics. And now's a good time to remind you that, or remind everybody that James is almost became the president, or the prime minister of Britain. No, I'm just kidding. You ran for office? Britain would have been
Yeah,
saved.
well, the highest I ran for was Lib Dem councillor in the local neighbourhood, but they haven't got my affiliation anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that's interesting because I guess it's the the political, like what motivates the populations, and what kind of gets things moving. It's a interesting question that obviously, if we're talking about, coming back to the cyberpunk or post cyberpunk, then that genre, I spent a lot of time talking about how it's inherently political, even if the original coiner of the term cyberpunk, Bruce Bethke, used it as a marketing term, but by including the punk, which has always been, a kind of a countercultural, always been a subversive, uh, musical genre, among other things, and so it's kind of like it's always inherently political, from my perspective. That's why when I was drawn to it, that's why I like games like Technobabylon, because they do involve a lot of that, you know, um, you know, the trying to draw a comparison between Ghost in the Shell and Technobabylon, and I had it, and I'm sure it's gonna come back to me. Oh, that's right. I remember in Ghost in the Shell, I was like rereading the actual original. Ghost in the Shell is another, obviously, uh, 90s anime.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. I mean, you can't say Ghost in the Shell. I mean, you can't. You don't know what Ghost in the Shell is, you get your Cyberpunk card revoked. So go back, go back and watch it, the live action, the original, and then I was reading that. I was actually reading the manga of it by, was it Masamune Shiro, I believe, and
Hmm.
yeah, and it's actually more political in the manga. When I was reading it, it goes into a lot more depth. In fact, in the first, every time I go back and rewatch it, I notice more and more, especially as I get older, and a little bit hopefully wiser, although possibly just more wordy. But as like when I watch Ghost in the Shell, the first 2 minutes, I want to say, it's there is there's an American official is in Japan, and is basically throwing weight around there, and I was thinking about it, and I was like kind of like listening to and getting more, um Japanese perspectives, because a lot of times in the West, there's a lot of people who like anime, obviously, right? There's, obviously we both, right? Sheffy is, a character that is very much anime, and if you're into science fictional and cyberpunk genres, you can't miss the anime, right? Style and so much of cyberpunk was developed in that, like Ghost in the Shell. But then like there's this other, there are like all these other aspects of Japanese culture, even in the anime itself, that are missed, that I missed, right, when I first watched it. And one of them is that the American, coming back to Ghost in the Shell, is that the American official that's there, it's for one perspective, it's just a bunch of politicians, right, pontificating, and maybe you could be, your interest is possibly maintained by the skin tight PV suit on the attractive, robotic main character with blue hair, or possibly, the gunplay or just beautiful scenery, right? But then if you're actually paying attention to what they're saying and talking about, it's the United States, which was basically involved in, and this is it had a real political context, which is the Japanese microchip, Japanese technology like Toshiba corporations, and the Japanese industrial might was, right, it was one of the yellow peril fears, and the stopping the rise of Japan, right, was, or trying to contain it, right, which the U.S. has done to multiple places, including also contained the French industry at one point in the 21st century. That was part of the politics, the geopolitics, right, in that scene. And Motoko Kusanagi actually assassinates him, right? The main character, he goes to the show, in the first 2 minutes says, "What democracy," right, while cloaked, falls off the side of a building and blows away an American official. So that actually it's actually extremely political, more political. I would wager that, like, actually, if people,
I thought it was the
what's that?
I thought it was the Japanese defector she blew away and made it look like it was supposed to be an attack on both of them.
Oh, okay. Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe, yeah. Was it Japanese defector? Okay, but
Yeah, they were trying to give him. He was trying to get political sanctuary from the American Empire, and while the official public security police couldn't get him, Kusanagi drops by the window and blasts him. And oh no, we have no idea who did it. Oh, what a shame. Oh
yeah,
dear.
yeah. I guess, I guess, maybe I was reading, but I mean, I guess part of my point is that, like, it's that but she does say, like, what democracy, which of course that's unsayable in Japan, the United States, or any of its allies, because obviously they're all democracies, and like, obviously Metal Gear Solid is another one of the games in that genre, a game in the cyberpunk genre that deals a lot with imperialism and the actions of such entities around the world, right? So, but long story short, I guess I was kind of trying to make a point about cyberpunk and why it's always political, and so having a degree in politics helps a lot. And I'll stop talking. How do you think the politics will play out in Technobabylon 2? Like, is there any particular, I don't want to, you don't have to say, like, there's a point, but is there any, like, particular things you want to get across in terms of politics in Technobabylon 2?
I think I'm still kind of appreciating Gene Roddenberry's perspective of advocating for a better world by making it the point that it's not a bad thing. It can be absolutely normal. I've said before, like in the 60s, it was unusual to have so many different nationalities, a black woman as part of the main cast, a Russian on the bridge. Whereas when I grew up watching it in the 90s, it didn't click that this was an unusual thing, and that was a sign of improvement. And I like the idea that there is possibility to improve the society of the future by whatever means, and I like the idea of showing it by normalizing it, and possibly people not even realizing that it's a normal thing, not even realizing that it's a thing that they would otherwise have noticed until it's too late. That's when I get my claws into them and indoctrinate them after the 2 hour period for the refund has passed.
Yeah, exactly. Technobabylon, obviously, you caught a lot of flack, but I think it turns into part of the marketing, right? Where a lot of people were upset that certain types of characters were in Technobabylon One, right? Uh, and including LGBTQ plus characters, including there's a very diverse cast, um, and
Well, to be honest, at least I think it's been the response has been more overwhelmingly positive to that, which is encouraging. And there's a few of the people who complain about that sort of thing, but I'm not aiming to please them. That's absurd. I'm not marketing to them. I'm making if they want a cyberpunk game that caters to their needs, then they can go and make one themselves, frankly. But uh, it's I'm telling a story I want to tell, and I mean, it's not a world I necessarily want to live in, but it's more like a vehicle for telling stories about people and how they react to things rather than outlining a framework or a manifesto.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember because I think it was Dave, Wadget Eye Dave, who shared or somebody shared that as like that was that the negative review from like a let's say more right wing perspective was a selling point. Yeah, like as you said, for a lot of people who actually like that aspect of it. I mean, obviously, I also like that aspect of it as well. Um,
I have
uh,
a framed picture of that review. It has made us so many sales.
Yep. Yeah, I do get that. I mean, that actually that's one place we could go, which is that the promotion of games over the course of the life turns out to be more work than the production a lot of the time. That's what I've discovered. Having been promoting, well, I guess you do have the Wadget Eye brand itself kind of does a lot of heavy lifting for that, at least in the adventure game genre. But even still, the Dave and you know, there's promotional work to still be done right there for at least whoever is doing it. For me, I'm mostly doing most of it myself. And that's been interesting trying to figure out where the adventure game market is. I haven't actually been to. I should probably one day get to one of the adventure events, which are they are in London, so it's about half the world away. Um,
London and I think Germany, and there was one in, I want to say, Czech Republic a couple of years ago that was quite big. But funny, Adventure X, I've been to all but one of them, and the first time it was a room in a pub, a room above a pub with about 12 people in total, and now it's one of these industry events that they've revealed two different Broken Sword games at these events now, so I think it's getting some cachet.
wow, yeah, that's good news for the adventure game genre. So in case you thought adventure games were all the indie retro genres are always simultaneously dead and alive. It seems. The last I
They've made a huge comeback in the last few years. Like Detroit Become Human is one that more people played than you'd otherwise expect for an adventure, and I mean, it might be stretching the boundaries of what one would compare to old style adventures, but there was that sequel to Beneath Steel Sky, Beyond a Steel Sky, that was really good as well. And there's a Star Trek one came out this year as well, Resurgence, which felt great to play. I didn't care for the ending, but it was a great experience playing it. And the makers of Detroit are also making a Star Wars game in the same genre.
oh wow, yeah, yeah, that's big news. Detroit Become Human. Um, yeah, I remember that when that came out, that made a big splash, and the Star Trek. Star Trek adventure games. I guess there was always one of the original adventure games was Space Quest, so it's always it's been this. It was only a matter of time before the the Star Trek as the one of the major franchises got into that. So I noticed more people are
Well,
more.
they got in.
What's that?
I was going to say they got into it back in the 90s as well. Star Trek 25th Anniversary and Judgment Rights were two of them based in the original series, and there's also Final Unity for the Next Generation as adventure games.
Right. Yeah. They're the other words. But there's also a Blade Runner game which I like to go back and I like to look at pictures of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, Blade Runner by Westwood Studios. The 2.5D adventure game that actually there's a lot of 2.5D games back in those days. Now that I went back and looked at it. Now that I know what I'm looking at, obviously Resident Evil was another. I don't know if that counts as adventure, but it's one of those. It's one of those games right at the cusp before they could fully do 3D, with the whole world being 3D. So that was an interesting time. But anyway, coming back to the present, I think that the Star Trek, I haven't played any of those. Like I said, I end up watching more shows and movies than actually playing through a lot of games. I do look at what games are coming out, but haven't actually been playing through that many of them, which I probably should, as I said, I'll fix soon. But Star Trek, the adventure game genre, I guess, is really, I guess to an extent, like if I always kind of thought of it as like RPGs minus combat is kind of basically like around what the adventure game. It's approximately what the adventure games are made out of, because they're it's puzzle solving, right? Obviously, go back to the original point and click adventures. A lot of it is I guess trying to use unusual objects that you combine in your inventory in weird ways, and the entertainment value is how silly a way. The absurdity is the feature. It's almost like put the chicken with the pulley in the middle to get some guy to slide down the zip line. It's kind of like that's kind of almost part of the game. I mean, for the old school adventure gamers, I don't know what you think about that. Do you think it's important to always have a cat mustache puzzle in your adventure game?
No. Ideally, I think there should be some. In the worst case, there should be somebody you can talk to who points you in the right direction. And yes, I've sometimes watched streamers playing Technobabylon and getting stuck on particular bits. So if I were to remaster it, I know where I'd have more signs and arrows pointed at it. But the experience I'm looking for is it leads to a particular kind of there's a kind of feeling of satisfaction you get from solving those that's like nothing else in any other game. It's like when it's like in Metal Gear Solid 5 when you're trapped in a sniper duel and then you realize you can just call in your friends to drop a car on top of the other sniper and resolve the fight that way. It's lateral thinking in that sense. But something that's definitely improved since the earlier adventures, I think, is Disco Elysium is an example of it, because it's one of those situations where it doesn't say, I can't do that or no. It's leads to a different result, and even failure leads to a compelling narrative. The character fails over and over again, but that starts to define the character and lead down an entire new narrative.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of the there's no way to actually lose the game if failure leads to a at least entertaining and interesting outcome. That's definitely. I know a lot of the detective games do that sort of thing, right? Where it's you could get through the game and simply just not solve a lot of the puzzles. Or obviously, like I was thinking of Undertale as one where you can get through the game with a whole variety of outcomes, depending on what approach you take. I find for myself, like I do like those games, and I think about making more of those, and then I think that and then I think you know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a team of people and they're gonna make it, and I'll just write, I'll write the world because I need to write
You
ten.
be the ideas guy.
I'll be the ideas guy, and I you know I'll write the world and the story out. You guys figure out how to implement that if you like. You know, if you like having uh, 10 different possible outcomes, and then having to spend years debugging stuff because of the near infinite freedom you've given the player. That's one thing I remember. I like, it's I basically like there are still bugs obviously in Terminus Machina, but I'm like I'm not gonna. I don't have the time to fix every possible one because of all the systems that I've added. But I guess if you do, if you do give the player the freedom to do all those things, basically almost anything that they want, and you have to give them you have to give them a something like somewhat reasonable. Yeah, like the reactions of characters and the world, how the world reacts has to be somewhat reasonable. It kind of like, especially when I think about this, when I think about the story, I guess maybe I'm too cinematic in that way, or book like in that way, because books have one story and the cinema has generally one story, unless you're Black Mirror Bandersnatch episode, for the most part, right? I guess choose your own adventure books, but I still kind of think of story as this kind of like there's the beginning, the middle, and the end, and then it does kind of I kind of think Deus Ex had like several endings, but even Deus
But a
Ex.
lot of them weren't.
Okay, yeah.
Most of Deus Ex's endings weren't dependent on things that had happened throughout the game, and I know I'm guilty of that in Technobabylon as well. But in future, I want to make it so that these things have impacts on the ending um, more significantly, more meaningfully.
Mm-hmm. So you're gonna have you're gonna try to work in more of the decisions throughout the game. I think you had, how many endings did you have?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
two endings, and for the most part, it's a matter of press button A or press button B. But I consoled myself at the time um, by at least making what happened in that ending more meaningful, as a completely different cutscene at the end of it as a result of it. I wanted to avoid the Mass Effect 3 situation of, I mean, this is more than a decade, so I don't think it counts as a spoiler, where the ending is red explosion, blue explosion, or green explosion, depending which of three buttons you press.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's yeah, that's that yeah. I guess you could say the player had choices, but yeah, it's not, at least with the Deus Ex you had like they had at least some kind of way that the way the game wraps up. You have at least a short minute or maybe a minute of cutscene of like this is how things went. Um you got, I guess you did get different reactions. Do you want to have a thing, do you think you'll have in the game in Technobabylon 2 different characters like reacting throughout. I was trying to think of a game where that happens that I've actually played. I know in the Nameless mod, you've played the Nameless mod, right? Or no?
Yes.
Yeah. So like in that one, you can definitely split the game in half at a certain point and kind of play totally different factions. I mean that's probably a bit much, but
Yeah, they're about halfway through each faction story. It ends up splitting again depending on which part of the faction you're siding with.
yeah. So do you think like what level of viability do you think you're gonna go for Technobabylon 2?
Um, I think, I mean, it's one of those cases where it would be nice, but I don't have nearly enough capital or people or workforce behind it to implement something like that. It's probably going to end up being more like, well, ideally, if I can get it working properly, it'd be more like Heavy Rain in terms of how multiple it might turn. So there is one aspect of it that always comes out the same, but depending on how things have gone, some people may or may not have survived to the ending, or some people might be in a rather different position emotionally by the end of it. Um, Oh, one of the things I loved about Heavy Rain is that you didn't have to participate in the story. You're a father who's being blackmailed with the life of his son to these evil puzzles being left by a maniacal kidnapper, and he can turn up to the puzzle and just say, nah, and walk off. And by the end of it, the kidnapper is furious that the FBI investigator has shown up rather than the loving father coming to rescue his son.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like a it's like interesting way to spin this flip the story around. Um, yeah, that sounds like it'll be interesting. I know that it's always a struggle to you want to implement things and then you just you don't have the resources, the manpower, or possibly you're having physical health issues, which is that's something for me. I know you mentioned earlier in this podcast that you've had obviously increased uh, yeah, physical ailments to deal with, and like for me, like one of the things is a very strange problem to have, but like I have like multiple disabilities, but one of them is like actually just sitting and just typing actually at the keyboard for reasons I don't know if I have like terrible ergonomics. My posture has just been bad, and now it's catching up to me at the age of 40, or what. But like I actually like suddenly have all this back pain when I'm like thinking about what to type, which is obviously that's a problem that has been it's been hard to solve. Like actually I can like walk around and do a lot of things, but then something about my arm position has been actually causing me to it interrupts like sentences when I'm trying to type them. So it's just a weird problem to have, I know, but um trying to figure out how to I started writing Neophyte 2 lying down on a bed typing it into my phone for a good chunk of time, and that's been interesting. But anyways, I don't know if that's a topic that you particularly want to come back to, but I know you said that if you want to go more into how it's been working with the physical difficulties.
The physical issue, I say, the physical issue's been a new one, so it's been getting used to that and trying to mitigate it, and all kinds of experimentation with medications and things. But I have to say, it's not all entirely it's not unuseful because one of the effects I get is fairly vivid hallucinations, and there's been more than a few situations where that's led to inspiration. So, I mean, I think this is what in ancient Greece one might have called visions from my visions from the oracles sort of thing, but useful in that sense at least. But the result after that is I can't understand what people are saying for a while, which is a nuisance, especially if you're trying to write and the words all look like gibberish on the screen.
Yeah, I
And it's a
remember.
fascinating
Oh, go ahead.
it's a fascinating experience losing the use of your first language after at a moment's notice. It's sort of I know they're speaking English because it's the way English sounds, it's the cadence, it's the tone. They're looking at me like I should understand. But it's like a foreign language and it's a fascinating experience.
Huh? Right. That's right. Is it? I believe aphasia. No, it's somebody has a
Yes.
aphasia. That's right.
Yeah, aphasia and dysphasia.
Right. And isn't there a character in Technobabylon that like has that condition?
Yeah, he's given it to himself, and it's kind of more of a Hollywood aphasia because he's deliberately contracted this because it's part of a countercultural youth movement. But so I mean, some people get when they're aphasic, Barker and Wernicke's aphasia, they end up with misappropriated malapropisms, the wrong words, soliloquies, things like that. So that's the kind he's ended up with. In my case, it manifests less interestingly. It just sort of it's dysphasia rather than aphasia, and it sort of the whole language falls to pieces. But when the game came out, I had somebody complaining that it was um, diminishing and appropriating an illness, and I said, "Well, I've only given him something I get when it happens, so." you know, first-person experience of these things. I think I can speak from a position of understanding at least. It doesn't get in the way of everything, but it does make communication downright annoying.
Yeah, I guess it would. Yeah, I guess. Although that's good that you've been able to turn the condition into inspiration. Yeah, that's something that yeah it's been in the pandemic. It's been a bit trickier to yeah just I've been having less less total less total contact. So I've been trying to have to figure out ways get um to get inspiration. Obviously, I don't have the technology to contract the hip new designer virus to give me anything. So I don't know if that's gonna work out. But there are other things that we can do. Nothing illegal, and obviously condoning that would be a violation of the terms of service of the platform you're listening to this on. But there's lots of ways to hallucinate. And yeah, lots of ways to hallucinate, including having your artificial intelligence.
Fasting will lead to it.
What's that?
Even fasting will lead to it.
Oh, indeed, fasting. Lack of oxygen eventually causes there are lots of things. Extreme, um, pushing the body to extreme limits in varieties of ways will cause hallucinations. But I was gonna say just another topic, which is that another way that you can hallucinate is to uh, you know give vast quantities of internet scrape data to a large language model, and then have it pump out your term papers, and it might accidentally hallucinate details. And anyway, I'm dovetailing too. I don't know what you think about the generative artificial intelligence world that we've also entered into. I don't, how has has that impacted your world? The game itself, Chat GPT, obviously, Stable Diffusion, etc.
Um, I'm of the opinion that it's one of those things that's blown out of proportion in terms of how useful it is at this stage. There may come a point in the future where it is useful for actually um, interpreting and organizing data, but a lot of people have tried to get on the bandwagon early with this, but the bandwagon hasn't even arrived yet, and they're jumping the gun a bit. But most immediately, uh, I see it affecting the livelihoods of artists and performers. Who this is, you know, they certainly don't feel that it's worthwhile for replacing them, and I agree. I'm certainly not going to be turning to Dali for her backgrounds or anything, but it's the job is to convince those in a position of power that this is not this is not a suitable approach to take. I think one of the things I've been using is a tool for dialogue development in games, and what it can do is it can generate audio, and I've been using that as placeholders so that the game's got something to lip sync around. But it sounds like Microsoft Sam. I'm not going to rely on it for the game. I'm going to get a real actor to record it eventually. There's plenty of things at this stage that AI is not capable of, and even to say, even to the future, there's going to be places for people in any situation. People still make furniture. It's not all turned out in factories. But as I say, it's pretty rich coming from somebody whose story is about essentially a city running artificial intelligence, but I don't see that as an issue to the extent that some are in fear of it. I'm also not the kind of person who sees an imminent robot apocalypse. But what is a problem with these language models is the garbage they're trained on. You end up with. It's not that this chatbot AI is racist. It's that the data pool it's pulling from is flawed. It hasn't developed an opinion. it's essentially scraping news and media for patterns that it spits out as language. And while the results may be funny sometimes, I don't think they're useful as yet.
Yeah. Yeah. This is something that you know. Uh, Actually, reading and learning about the generative AI, which some of the actual researchers at Google and these various entities that work on the actual AI, because actually a lot of this is, and I've been talking about this a lot when I do talk about the technological present and how that connects to the science fiction, because a lot of Near 2 is now involving the some of the turns that generative AI could take, and that the original the basis of what's called AI. I almost want to say that, like, sometimes when I have lower blood sugar and not enough sleep, I'll just say generative AI is just it is the pyramid scheming of all of science, the history of Western science fiction, warped into a pyramid scheme. Obviously, that's a bit of a extreme stance, but the concept of artificial intelligence itself, right? I've kind of come to discover is itself problematic. It is in the same way that, like, people believing in the way that humans tend to see faces in patterns of light in a jungle, right? Obviously, to see a cat, the way that people see, the way that people give personhood, right, to objects, right? The way that people have funerals for dead robot dogs, right? Like the Aibo, I believe. The way that people, or even like religion itself. I won't go too far on that topic, but but the way that people like give personification, and also as a native Hawaiian, we also give personification to nature as well, which can have positive impacts if we think of the land and oceans and water and forests as relatives, right? Then the tendency to want to preserve those environments rather than, I don't know, destroy them, as some peoples do, because they don't give them the respect that they're due.
Respect they deserve.
Yeah, they don't give them they don't give them the respect they do. Because I mean, just as an example, in Hawaiian language, right? Like, aina is that which feeds and sustains. That's the Hawaiian word for it, and it is thought of as the mother or grandmother of humanity, right? And the older sibling of for us native Hawaiians is kalo, which is the staple. It's like a sweet potato plus super antioxidant and nutrition heavy leaves, right? So that's the elder brother that takes care of us, and the grandmother or the mother is the land that sustains, right? And so they're kind of like anyway, I know I'm going in 5 different directions simultaneously. I promise I'll come back to AI. And so that way in which the like, for whatever reason, like, people, we have this tendency to see agency, the human organism sees agency in the world. Maybe initially that was because if you ran from what you thought was a tiger rather than just a bunch of random patterns of light, that had a benefit, or for whatever reason that people do that, right? And that people see deities in the sky, sometimes that empower imperial systems that are not so good, but sometimes they have beneficial they have things that are adaptive to the survival of species, such as having respect for the plants, the animals, and the ecosystems, right? And then, but then also artificial intelligence, right? I would argue is kind of like another manifestation of that, right? Which is, the researchers, in Caltech or MIT in the 50s or 60s who were working on artificial intelligence, like the people who came up with the Chinese black box experiment. I was studying to be a cognitive science. I remember watching all these videos and researching that whole topic back in the early 2000s, and like, even Turing himself, right, was Alan Turing, right, who worked on the Turing machines that that was very instrumental, obviously, in assisting in cracking the Nazis' Enigma code and also developing the computer, right, that we use. But all of that together, artificial intelligence, is kind of like in the modern, let's say, information technology advanced society, right? People are still seeing the agency, seeing personhood in their phones, right? When people, the movie Her, right, is about millions of people who talk to Siri, right, or Alexa or Google
Mm.
as though they are friends or relatives, right? There are billions of very lonely people who are talking to chat GPT generated girlfriends and friends, etc. And that's a whole new reality. That and anyway, so long. I'll wrap this up, but I think that there's a positive aspects to it, but then I think one of like you, as you're kind of alluding to, one of the negative aspects is that ultimately, I mean, I've worked on some of AI, and I remember, like, I didn't work for Google, but I knew some about how autocomplete functions, right? And for a lot of Google researchers, it's basically, sometimes they call it spicy autocomplete. It's basically a large language model that predicts based on statistical patterns, right? The probability of what word will come after the previous word based on billions of sequences of words, right? It's just predicting the word, like, so if you're it's predicting what the most common sentence is, right? So if you've read if it has read, obviously, if you have a racist society and it's read billions of articles, or paragraphs, right, that have criminal, right, and then what follows is, right, a black man, which frequently it does in a racist society, then the AI is going to probabilistically determine that that's what's going to follow in that sentence or somewhere within that sentence, right? And they have studies on this that have shown that, among other things, right? But also, like, so then when the human societies, right, which have governments, which have money, right, which are in the throes under end stage capitalist realities, right, that need to offload their agency, right? They have to offload what they have done, as they did, and as they always must do, right? Any corrupt organization, government, other entity has to try its best to offload that. So now they're offloading all of that, right? Or I think a lot of entities, let's say the billionaire class, are saying, you know what? It's nothing to do with humanity, or it's nothing to do with what we've done. What's happening is that we have artificial intelligence that could cause us to become extinct, and and even now there's even there are corporations that are trying to use, I feel like they're trying to say that we have to invest in AI. We have to invest in AI. The AI is everything that has happened for the last 100 years. That's all going to be off of our hands, because this God machine, or this, and it's in all the science fiction too, right? I'm partially guilty of this, I suppose, right? It's in Deus Ex, right? Which is that there's this super entity that's maybe gonna have, JC Denton will be part of it, but it is beyond us. It is alive. It has thoughts. It has feelings, and we have to appease it. We have to give it sacrifice. We have to pray to it, or even if we don't pray to it, we have to figure out what it wants. We have to but it, long story short, which is that a lot of the problems that are happening are because of kind of like misplaced personification, or misplaced agency, that a lot of the scientists in the field, kind of like a lot of COVID scientists trying to scream, hey, these are the actual precautions. Hey, this is actually airborne. Hey, actually vaccines work. Hey, actually cleaning the air and masks work. And people are not listening. And so the scientists are saying, actually this ChatGPT, it has real impacts, like you're saying. But the human population that has grown up surrounded by data, HAL 9000, Skynet, et cetera, and now it has the billionaire cheerleaders for this technology. It is anyway. I just wrote a novel. I'm sorry. I'll stop talking now. But and you can react to any or all of that.
Oh, I think you've probably covered everything generally. Every
I
but you're, I agree that to some extent people are pattern recognizing engines and um, currently a lot of what people call AI is as well. But at this stage, there's no more ought to it than, as you say, the Chinese room matter. So in Technobabylon, I made sure that the only AI with any kind of ambiguity as to whether it's self-aware or not is Central, the gigantic organic computer that runs the city, based on human neural tissue. Whereas every other artif speech marks artificial intelligence in the game, if it comes up in conversation with it, it will make sure to point out to you that it isn't a real person. It does not have feelings. It does not have thoughts in that sense. It is an analytical engine designed to gauge a situation and respond to it based on patterns formed beforehand or instructions laid down. And I I think there needs to be a reckoning in media of people when they see AI, they do think Skynet, they think huge, powerful, mechanical deity, whereas what it is for the most part in reality is a thing for forming patterns, and it's not going to be anything like artificial personhood for a long time. And when it gets to that stage, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But I think there's two examples of AI in media that I like for a similar reason. Have you ever seen Interstellar, the movie?
yeah, I did see it in a show. Yeah.
So it's kind of like Tars and Case, the two robots in that. I love how unconventional they look and work. They're sort of big rectangular slabs from whom bits unfold for various purposes. And they too insist that, they point out to everyone they don't actually think and feel. They just have an interface designed to communicate, to make interaction with people easier. Um, HAL 9000, a similar thing. Yes, people think he's the prototypical mad AI kills people, but it's more like computer with conflicting directives tries to cut the Gordian knot, as it were, and resolve this issue in what it perceives to be the best way at the time. And the other one, it's a movie called Robot and Frank. So stars Frank Langella as a retiree who's suffering from old age issues, whose son gets him a robot, like a domestic help robot, to help him out around the house, make sure he's taking his medicine and things. And while Frank, the protagonist, develops a friendship with this, seems to develop a friendship with this robot, it's more that the robot has realized that has worked out that by stimulating this guy's passion, in this case, robbery, it is improving his mental health and his physical health as well by getting him to go out and do things. And at the end of towards the end of the movie, the robot has to keep reminding him it doesn't have feelings. It is a box. It is essentially a recording device that's going to be turned over to the police for evidence if he doesn't do something about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a great film. Absolutely recommend it.
what was it called again?
Robot and Frank.
Oh, Robot and Fang. Okay, I think I might have not seen that, so I will have to fix that. Um, yeah, that sounds like another very interesting um yeah, way to take the robots. Um, Obviously, like, yeah, that's yeah, it is a staple of the kind of genres that we're in. And I think that going back to something that you said earlier, yeah, like if the machines, um if the machines do actually become artificial persons, obviously Neofu deals with that. That's kind of one of the main topics of that. Um, and but yeah, I'm not. I don't see. I guess that's one of the difficulties is like is because it is something that will have to be people have to be I would say ideally people would understand like what we're saying where like this what you're talking to here, right? This is basically a calculator for language, right? And we don't have that other thing. Now you can, I mean, obviously, like people talk to stuffed animals, right? People talk to. I think one of the examples people use is the magic 8 ball, right? Where you shake it and it will say yes or no. Probably not, right? It gives you these answers, and people know the magic 8 ball, right? Isn't I think for the most part people know that it's just a ball that's randomly. It's like rolling a dice for language, right? Like if you're playing a tabletop RPG and you roll a dice or Yahtzee or whatever, but yeah, people don't really understand. Um, I think one of the things that is a problem is I was doing this experiment actually because I do teach we homeschool here. We teach our kids, and so while we're teaching them how to, we teach them about like STEM and tech, and I was like, we did this experiment of you know, Chat GPT, generative AI versus currently existing search engines, right? And it's really like one of the main differences is that like if you Google something, if you just type into Google or DuckDuckGo or your Bing, non AI Bing, right? If you type in a sentence like hey, where who was Thomas Jefferson or how to make a sandwich, right? If you type that into the Google, it gives you a list of links, right? It might give you like the number one, like a short sentence that has been like rated up by humans, right? For the most part, and maybe verified, so it doesn't give complete misinfo. But it's like basically like it gives you it gives you the receipts. It gives you the sources from which the engine, right, that you are searching, has gotten the information from, and then it gives you an order of rank. Obviously, the rank could be manipulated by out of corporations or people with lots of money. Give money to put one result on the top, or there's other political reasons why one might be pushed to the top. But for the most part, especially if you're searching for something fairly inconsequential, like how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it will kind of give you that. But then when you have ChatGPT or Bing, like Bing uses the new, or Bing has the generative AI assisted search. It gives you basically the same.
Yeah, oh, that thing's annoying.
Right? Yeah, and so right, and so I'll finish it. You say what you want to say about that, but the sentence what it gives you is it gives you like a paragraph. I actually did this on a stream. It gives you a paragraph of basically this almost the same information, but it's written in in a more opaque way. And ChatGPT is even more opaque. There's no links, but the Bing will give you a paragraph as if it is speaking, and it says like the peanut butter jelly sandwich, a favorite among a favorite lunch of among many people's, and then it starts, and then it gives you a sentence that has a link to the first source, and then another link in the next sentence, right? But what it is basically turning it into basically prose, what you would get from a search engine, and so, but when you remove the sources, right, and it's not as obvious, like a magic 8 ball is more obvious. And you kind of, if you put the magic 8 ball in a box, right, and gave it like a human face, and then had it like speak. Anyway, I guess you kind of get what I'm saying. Where it's basically doing what search has always done, except it's doing it it's kind of like putting the Wizard of Oz more behind
It's
the curtain.
adding a
Yeah.
middleman.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Go. But say what you wanted to say about Bing, though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but that thing's dreadful, that suggestion thing, and they've also integrated Darley into its image search as well. So not just scraping the internet for images, it's also coming up with them through the whole um, automated plagiarism system that it has anyway, rather than directing you to websites um, that contain images.
Right, right. I don't know. Has that? Obviously, there's a big obviously legal debate, right? And the business world has been in a lot of flux. A lot of things are up in the air right now. Obviously, of course, with the writers and actors strikes who are impacted by generative AI, and Hollywood wants to replace every actor with right, computer generated performances and give them $100 for the rest of their life, which obviously the actors don't want to take,
Mm.
right? I mean I
I
can't
think that
go ahead, yeah.
I was going to say, I think there were some interesting experiments to begin with, like in Star Wars when they brought Peter Cushing back from the dead for Rogue One. That was an interesting idea, and as an experiment, nice. But it's, I think it's gotten a bit too far in Star Wars. Like they got the Mark Hamill simulation and the Carrie Fisher simulation, whereas other franchises like Star Trek, they've just recast it and done absolutely fine. You know, we got new Scotty, uh, new Kirk, etc.
Right. Yeah. That was one interesting point of discussion about where that's going, right? Because I think it was I think Mark Hamill, like I might be incorrect about this. It might be secondhand information, but Mark Hamill said when he was approached about using, right, a overlaying his face over the other younger actor, less well known obviously actor's face in, what was it, Boba Fett, Mandalorian,
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian, yeah. And so when he was approached about that, I think he was just excited because that's a neat new technology. But then like later on, like he thought about it, and obviously a lot of people have also thought about it, and he was like, actually maybe it would have been better to just use the young actor's face. Obviously, like this has happened before. Like I think one of the most famous examples in the '90s was like when James McAvoy was playing young Professor X, when Patrick Stewart was the old Professor X in the X-Men movie series, and he kind of, it was like obviously, Patrick Stewart is still around and still acting, but we can obviously he's not he's not going to be doing a lot of stunts, and he's not going to be doing the kinds of things that and obviously he might not be doing X-Men forever, and so we'll have somebody else kind of come in, and it's kind of, you can see he's going to be taking the place in future films, right, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so like, but like, yeah, but with the Mark Hamill with Mark Hamill's face being overlaid, yeah, then you lose the ability to, not that you lose, but you're losing something where the young actor is not visible, so they're not going to be obviously from a studio's perspective, right? If you know you could just see the green flashing in the eyes of every executive, where they're like, we might never have to pay millions of dollars out for millions of dollars worth of star power ever again. We'll just have Mark Hamill's face on some random actor who because they don't have visibility, the brand, the name recognition, they're interchangeable. We'll just have any stunt or just some random person walking, or somebody with some amount of physical training, or maybe not, because we'll just use computer generated bodies. But we can have Mark Hamill. We can have, obviously, right, there's many of these, right. We can have many of these visualizations of, imagine Wes Anderson directing Bill Murphy and Bill Murray and Bruce Willis in a movie, and we can generate any script for any movie in any style with any actors, and and obviously like that. But then obviously that causes all kinds of other problems, which is why this strike continues. I believe they're in negotiations. But anyways, so yeah, so because then you're gonna lose. Even Neil Gaiman, I think, said early on, like during the writer's strike, we need to have we need to have these writers' rooms, right? We're gonna lose, right, the skill and the art of actually writing and making those adjustments in real time, training, like it's like the guilds, right? Really, they're the entire knowledge bases when you think about it, of certainly the entertainment industry, but also that goes out to wider humanity, right? Which is that if people aren't passing the skills and knowledge, a lot of which is like not so easily transferred, into, not so easily just transferred into some kind of YouTube training program or something, then you're gonna lose. And also, you don't have people doing this stuff, then you're gonna lose all of these skills, techniques, knowledge, and then when you really need it, right, then it won't be there, because people will be saying things like, why would I want to study medicine when an AI is going to be doing all the diagnoses, or just to come out from the right way. And then if the AI starts to break, which they do, right, there's been shown that as AI consumes content generated by other AI, which they are doing, there's this kind of infinite entropy cycle that rapidly causes decay of their artificial neurons, basically, so that they start spitting out increasingly more and more garbage. Like there's AI that have already written false, like there is AI that has been used to write medical or for example, like foraging or biological, like biology and botany books, and they put in the botany book that the X or Y mushroom, like this particular mushroom, is edible when it's not. So that actually, like, so the impact of this, I feel, is like far more. It's very far-reaching, that in ways that we probably can't know, possibly until it's too late. And anyway, but that's just something else to think about. That's something I think about a lot. Like in Neophyte 2, there's a scene where the character is like, it's like one of those scenes. There's a scene kind of like Technobabylon where you need to get there's a machine that is saying, we need your bodily fluids to confirm your identity, right? And it's like, and so okay, here's some blood, and the machine is like, this blood is at 98 degrees Celsius. The humans are cold-blooded, and we need 60 degree Fahrenheit, because they're still using Fahrenheit. That's part of the dystopia in the future. So we need. The whole entire universe, the galaxy, uses Fahrenheit. Nobody uses metric system anymore, because somebody actually commented that, no, that's exactly the point. And so anyway, so it's like, so now we need 60-degree Fahrenheit. We need cold water temperature blood, or you don't count as a person, because human beings are reptiles who have scales, and so the machine does not accept your blood until you figure out how to put it into like an ice chest, and because all science textbooks and all of biology is being written by increasingly degenerating artificial generative AIs. And anyway, that's the end of that. Yeah, so I don't know. Those are just like lots of ideas that I've thrown out there, but I do love the heating the temperature. I don't want to give it away, but that's one of my favorite parts of Technobabylon, is where you have to adjust the temperature of physical tissue in order to solve the puzzle. That was very interesting.
You'd be surprised how often people don't get that one.
Oh yeah. Oh, I get stuck on that one.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that I think I would signpost better in a remastered version. Most of the clues revolve around showing Dr. Lau things and her being creeped out that it's a dead hand, and why isn't this hand working on the hand scanner? Because it's dead. And I think it's one of those ones I'm going to have to be even less subtle.
Oh yeah, that definitely. I mean, to be honest, actually, Technobabylon, I don't remember getting. I'm not. I haven't played as many adventure games as many fans, so I kind of came later to the genre. But I remember Technobabylon is a game that I got less stuck on. Maybe I'm just more familiar. I mean, I spend a lot of time obviously consuming Cyberpunk, so it's kind of, some things are more intuitive to me maybe, but I don't remember getting. I remember thinking about that one for a bit, and then I remember having that set, like you said earlier, the sense of fulfillment upon figuring it out. That's why I definitely remembered that one. but I can see how it's trying to signpost things. Maybe that's another topic just to spiral out from the science fictional topic that like signposting, the games being too. I guess this is something I'm really asking you for market research now, because I don't I think about that a lot, right? I don't want to make it so hard. I don't want to make this adventure game so hard that people just like quit because they're upset that they can't figure it out. At the same time, obviously, there's those hardcore or let's say more veteran adventure game players who might complain that the puzzles were too easy. You kind of started talking about that. Obviously, like there's no perfect way, and unlike let's say like a shooter or a RPG, you can't it's harder to have like a difficulty setting, right? Like where you can put it on easy or medium or hard, right? So then the enemies have more health if it's harder, and they do more damage if it's harder. So like in a puzzle game, that's it's a little tricky, right? And you want to signpost as much as you can. But obviously there's people who say, well, there's too much signposting, it was too easy. I don't know, how do you feel like you're going about dealing with that?
Ideally, I would like to make it as organic as possible. To me, that's a big part of the experience. A lot of games, especially these days, they have, hint mode. Would you like to activate hint mode so that if you're stuck or click on the wrong things enough time, it starts pointing you in the right direction overtly, a big flashing arrow or text saying, combine the cat with the mustache. But to me, that's going too far in one direction, where the opposite direction is, why, I have a cat and a mustache. Why on earth would I put them together to get past the security guard? And in those days, you'd have to ask, call up the premium rate phone number to ask for the hints. Whereas these days, if you're that stuck, you can look it up online. And in the worst case, I think if people were stuck in Technobabylon, they could do that. I think my barometer for whether I think a puzzle is suitably challenging but not too challenging is my mother, because she is one of the few kinds of games she'll play, and my rule of thumb is if my mother can play it, then I've succeeded on that front for the most part. Also, I think she's probably about right for at least some of our target demographic when it comes to the games we make. But yeah, it's a balancing act, and part of the tremendous there's the feeling of success you get like no other when you solve an issue like that. But I also like the idea of being able to have many different approaches to an issue, which again is something Disco Elysium does well. Um, but there were a couple of adventure games in the 90s, Dragonsphere and Rex Nebula, where they had the normal mode, where, you need a sandwich, go to the fridge, pick up sandwich, use sandwich on obstacle. Or there's the harder mode, where it starts doing the silly things like, okay, so we need to get bread, so we need to get the ingredients together to make bread and leave them in the cupboard uh, fries, and then we need to get meat to put in the sandwich. So find animal, kill animal, cook it, and it sort of quadrupled the length of the game by making the puzzles increasingly abstract. Which is, the narrative still went exactly the same way. In the end, you have sandwich to pass obstacle, but it was it was an interesting approach to it as well, I think. But for me, I want to keep it as much a part of the world as possible, though it may end up being a situation where, at the very, very beginning of the game, I have an option you could tick on or off, or do you want clues? If you go for clues, then we lock you out of X number of achievements.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Yeah, if you, the achievements, that's another thing I remember. People were telling me, oh, you need to have achievements, and I was, I hadn't, been a big achievement hunter, so I was like, oh, how do we do that? But I guess yeah, having kind of like, yeah, that's a good point. Having the more difficult sections of the game for people who want to, get deeper into it. Complete other challenges. That's a good way to balance. That's something I have thought about. Where I was like, another thing I thought about related to that is where if I have some story or aspects of the world, because some people were like, there's a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of text in Neophyte. Well, in an adventure game, you're gonna have a lot of text. So I feel like if you're an FPS player and you're dropped, and then you're like, I wanted to play like a Cyberpunk game, but you're like, you're not into reading that much, then it may be, that's kind of like a, you wanted an orange but you got the banana, and so maybe, sometimes it's hard to gauge that. But anyway, one thing, but I was gonna say one way to kind of deal with the story stuff was, I have some parts of the Neophyte 2 where I'm designing it so that like you can get more into the story and the world, the background and the world and stuff. But it's kind of, I'm thinking about signposting it more so that like if you're like, well, I want to like solve the puzzles and then get through the game, and then I don't want to spend as much time. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of like the main story arc in one of the modern games that you kind of, if you want to complete the thing in a shorter time, you don't want to spend many times as many hours going through all of the lore of the universe, then you can do that. And so because there is a lot that I've added to the game, and some of it's kind of like it deepens the universe if you explore all the all the dialogue and all the background. Obviously, when you're point and clicking, you just if you stop clicking on if you just click on all the objects in the room, right, then you're gonna get all of that. But I was thinking
Brute
like,
force it eventually.
yeah, you brute force it eventually, right? And then one thing I was thinking about was how to try to like signpost like the most key information. Like if you just want to solve the puzzle and you don't want to get through all of the lore, then I put some things in capitals is one thing. I think I was playing some game. I can't remember which one it was, and then it was like, oh, I think it was a GZ Doom. It was a GZ Doom total conversion. Dearden is the one with the demon girl main character. It was actually, it uses like a Hexen Deus Ex style. It's one of those like it's trying to do an immersive sim, or it's trying to approach that. And like what they did was they'd always have like the key information, because it does have like look around the world, find the object, use basic use the metal on the blacksmithing area to melt it down, kind of that kind of puzzle solving. But everything would be like either color coded or in capitals, so that like if you like you don't have a lot of you played the game late last night and you're coming back and you can't really quite remember everything, it's like easy to kind of find the key information amongst all the texts, to just,
that's a good idea.
yeah. So in case you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much I had to wait, I can't remember all the paragraphs I've done, so that you can kind of like quickly kind of come back to quickly like get back into, oh, that was the key thing I was looking for, like I guess that's part of signposting, but it's just like another tactic. So I was like, I started like trying to I kind of signpost like, if you want to get out of this, like if you're like, if you're weird science fiction, speculative fiction nerds like us, and you want to learn about the eventualities of 75 iterations of the generative AI, or these other things, and you kind of just want to like move forward with the straight, the not necessarily like you're gonna miss a story, but you just kind of want to like solve this puzzle and then kind of like move that forward, then it's kind of like, well, you could get out of the conversation here. And by the way, like, this is like the key information. Anyways, I could just be, maybe that's more common, but that's something I've noticed with some of the newer games. This is a game was made by somebody younger, so I was like, oh, is that what the kids are doing these days? Oh, you kids. Yeah.
Yeah, quality of life changes. Kind of thing in a few years' time I wonder how you played games without them.
Right. What was your favorite quality of life addition to your latest replay of Deus Ex or any of the old games?
Ooh, I liked the notion in Human Revolution. You could have it so that important objects would glow, but I played through without on my one. But it's certainly a good idea, and the way they did it, it's not just a cheat system. It's that he's got cybernetic eyes with a computer analyzing everything he's looking at. That makes sense in the world and streamlines things to people playing it on lower difficulties. Um, and having gone through all of the series in relatively short order, I think these days it's also a lot more obviously signposted in terms of here's an arena, there's some guards so you can go shooting through them, there's the high route, there's the ventilation shaft route, or you can watch and time your way through them sneaking. It's sort of more obviously signposted between those approaches. And I think that's the result of years of study of the science of games, whereas in 1999 it was sort of a throw it at the wall and see what sticks, and they kind of arrived at a good notion back then, which has been iterated and improved upon and adapted. And we end up with what we've got today. Granted, we also don't have many of those games coming out from big publishers anymore, but hopefully the indies will take up the slack on that.
Yeah, I remember there was like I think it was 2016 was the indie apocalypse. Obviously that failed. 20 if yeah,
Much
it
like
seems
the death of adventure games.
yeah, every year they die again, don't they? It's a lazy games journalist, needs to needs to turn out the content quota, and it's right back to the adventure games are dead this year.
But if they don't, the AI is going to take over their job, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it definitely seems like there's more and more space like for the indies. I mean, if retro obviously is in the noughties now, then number one, I feel old, but also number two, yeah, because like that in the noughties, that was like for me, that's like I think of like I still think it's 1995 or something. For me, that's and like the noughties were I kind of stopped playing games for a bit in the late noughties. So by that time, it's kind of past what would not that I stopped all playing all the games, but I just wasn't playing every single game, or I wasn't playing all of the games that were coming out that were big. But so if you can make if you can make games like with a small team that are of the quality of the Xbox, like you said, PS2 Xbox generation, then that's really that's I mean that's good news for the indies. And yeah, because I mean I don't know the triple the yeah the, I haven't I can't spend $70. I can't for me I have trouble justifying $70 on games, let alone the I don't know if my machines can run those games nowadays. I did like watch like footage of like I don't know like Diablo 4. Actually, I went back and played Diablo again. That was one of my projects that I'm on the side thinking about is doing after Neo 2 is doing a Diablo like kind of like the first or the second one. That's obviously that's more
Mm.
RPG. That's more RPG. It's more or isometric. Obviously, just to do something a little different. I'm not sure exactly what that would look like, but do something just kind of not exactly in the same vein of what I've been doing for a long time. Obviously, I got to finish Neo 2 first, and we probably got to finish up this podcast soon. So, but I think like I'm really looking forward, obviously, to Technobabylon 2. I'm really looking forward to, you got to finish it whenever you can, how at the rate that you can, and I really gonna go back and play Technobabylon 1 and heat up that piece of human flesh and enjoy that you know enjoy that experience for the first time. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else that you really wanted to talk about, ask about, or say about the where you're at, or
Uh,
yeah.
I just want to say I'm looking forward to Near Future 2 as well. What's the sort of projection on that one, do you reckon?
Oh, good question. Good question. I actually just did a brief Q&A on the YouTube channel about that, and I've been telling my patrons for a while that I apologize that it's taken longer than I wanted it to, but I've been trying to finish it. Basically, I had set a deadline about 6 months ago, and I said I was gonna get the final 15. There's approximately 15 scenes done, and 15 scenes left to finish, and then that would take I would take about a week for each. Obviously, taking a week for a scene is a little bit might be a little bit too much of a rush, but I projected it would be done by October. Unfortunately, I didn't quite meet that. I'm basically in the ending, so I'm very close to the end. I'm like, I just have to kind of wrap it all up, but that means I'm kind of going back to the very beginning because I forgot what I was doing 6 years ago, and I'm kind of like, I'm sure you know how this goes, right? You're kind of like wrapping all the threads up of the story, and but I'm very close to the end. I've got about, I can't give you anybody a release date, because I still have to figure out the music and the sound, the voice acting. Obviously on Neophyte 1 I did half the voice acting, so I don't know if I'm going to do that again, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do, I still haven't decided if I will do the music myself again, because I did that for Neophyte 1. But it's very close to completion, and people who are voice actors, don't forget, you should follow me somewhere, and I will be putting out casting calls sometime soon. For people who want to.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Yeah. Thanks for playing the first one. And yeah, it's always good to hear. You know, Technobabylon. In case people don't know, Technobabylon is one of the inspirations that got me into even working on adventure games at all, and using Adventure Game Studio, because when I played, I think I first played Primordia, and I liked that one a lot, and then I played Technobabylon, and then I was like, wow, this game, I could, this could be made with like, a handful of people, or even possibly one person. And so if you like, if you
Really
even,
versatile.
yeah, it's really versatile. So yeah, it's been really awesome to get to talk to one of the people that I look up to, which is obviously James, and really great to hear all of these updates on Technobabylon and Technobabylon 2, and yeah, I really hope that the inspiration that you get from your condition continues. I hope that it doesn't worsen, uh, and I hope that you're able to, get Technobabylon 2, in a shape that you are happy with releasing it in, and I will be buying it on day one. Obviously, I will be playing through that thing, and looking
Thank
for.
you.
Yeah. And everybody also should go pick up Technobabylon. I already said that, but pick it up. If you bought it, buy it again for one of your friends, and give it to them
Yeah.
as a stocking stuffer. But anyways, yeah. So, where can we find you, James? If you want to shout out any of those things.
Um, as long as it's still alive, Twitter, at Technocrat Games. I'm on Discord, as this conversation proves, but I'm not on here as much. I'm on Mastodon as well, but goodness knows if how you'll find me. Uh, Twitter's probably the most reliable place to track me down, I'd say.
Great, yeah. Twitter. You can follow me also, of course, at the Silver Spook Games, minus D and Silver. And if you just type in Silver Spook, you probably will find me wherever. I'm all over the place on all the social medias. And yeah, so yeah, thanks again for stopping in. And I hate, I don't know how to sign out of. I don't know how to sign out of these podcasts, so why don't you give it a shot?
See you in the future.
See you in the future. There we go. That's perfect.